Yeah, I mean, I think that one of my very first experiences with exposure and response prevention was in 2015, and I had moved to Louisville, Kentucky, for school, and began working at a kind of a community counseling center that it just so happened specialized in the treatment of OCD or of obsessive compulsive disorder. I didn't know that when I was applying, and when I interviewed, somehow maybe it came up and I missed it, or maybe it never came up. I don't know. In any case, it's a bit of a long story, but the punchline of it is I really fell in love with OCD work. It really became a passion for me vocationally. I think the first couple of weeks were really tough because the the therapeutic process and the effective treatment of clinically significant anxiety symptoms, but obsessive compulsive symptomatology, sort of in particular. It tends to be a pretty rough process. It's really different from anything I had been introduced to that point in my professional life. I'd never really seen anything like this in the psychotherapy room. I mean, nothing. It was entirely different. I remember one of the therapists had this weird reputation, and she was just, sort of like, I don't know, like the bad boy of therapists, and she would sort of be called. It was something like a drill sergeant or a drill instructor, and I just remember being so confused by that, particularly because, well, I served, right, and so I'm sitting here in my mind, imagining this young lady as a drill instructor. Slash psychotherapist, and it's just like I'm really struggling to see what you mean. And it's very interesting because by 18 months in, and I had hung through, and I was still there, and I had really begun to really enjoy the work. I sort of began to take on a similar persona, and I found myself personally gravitating toward her style. And it was so different from anything I had ever known, anything I had been introduced to in graduate school, anything I had read, from Carl Rogers to Fritz Perls, of course, the psychodynamic school, even Aaron Beck and Judith Beck, the cognitive therapy idea, or cognitive behavioral therapy. You could say that exposure and response prevention is a sort of a specific application, a diagnosis specific application of CBT, but it's still so very different even from strict, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's very different from other psychotherapeutic schools of thought or practices. It was just, anyways. So my first experience of being an OCD therapist, I think I probably talked my clients to death, and tried, like so many other clinicians today, to employ talk therapy, and just trying to build rapport and work to understand their problem, and help them to feel heard in session. And I don't mean to diminish those things. There's real value, at least in some symptomatological contexts. There's real value there. I'm just not, convinced, and of course neither is the literature, that talk therapy is the answer when you're dealing with somebody who's really suffering. Their symptoms are intense, or they're severe. I think a lot of those kinds of individuals would much rather feel better than to feel heard. Would much rather walk away with real techniques that they can use to regulate their symptom severity than to walk away with, having found a therapist who's a good listener. It's kind of like, I could give a damn that you are a good listener. Can you help me feel better? Yes or no? Can you help me in a time-limited sort of way? Can you help me in a month? Can you help me in a month and a half to feel quantifiably better? Maybe not all the way better, but to reduce my symptoms, or to equip me with skills with which I can reduce my symptoms and then maintain therapeutic progress over the course of time. Can you do that or not? And that's some pressure, That's some pressure.